Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Today, folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, making history, how Governor Wes Moore and Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller have now made history as they've been officially sworn in to be as Governor Wes Moore is Maryland's first Black governor. We'll talk to you about the latest details in this historic moment. Also, let's talk about the U.S. Conference of Mayors as they are convening for their winter session. We're going to be checking in with the mayor of Youngstown, Ohio, to give us the latest about what's happening in the conference and in his city. Also, later on, can we talk about Black Twitter and how it's being celebrated and the rise of Black Twitter on social media? We'll have that discussion. Also, we'll be checking in to discuss Sheila Jackson Lee's anti-white supremacy bill, and what does that mean and how will it impact Black folks in the country? So we got a lot to talk about, so stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. Very, very excited about what we're going to be discussing because we have a lot to talk about. Folks, first and foremost, we're going to be talking about what's happening in my home state of Maryland as history has officially been made in the state as Governor Wes Moore becomes the state's first Black governor. Now, we've been live streaming on blackstarnetwork.com all of the ceremony for Inauguration Day. And before we get to that live stream, I want to bring in my sister, who's the culture crew member for the day, my sister Suzette Speaks, who is the host and TV host. You can definitely check her out on YouTube. And also, she is an attorney out of Miami, Florida. Suzette, how are you this afternoon?
Doing well, Faraji. Hi, everybody. Glad you're with us. I thought you was going to say Merlin. I thought that's how y'all say it up there.
Hey, yo, Suzette.
I know we keep
Some of us say Merlin. Some of us say Merlin. I'm not going to act as if that doesn't happen. People used to.
Only teasing, but good to be here.
Absolutely. We've been live streaming the ceremonies of Inauguration Day for the first Black governor and the first woman Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller. Very, very historic day. And we're going to just share with you just a little bit of what was said and a little bit of this activities and festivities there. But what do you make of this moment for the state of Maryland? Because it looks like, based on the history, the first Black governor was Governor Douglas Wilder of Virginia. The second Black governor was Governor Deval Patrick of Massachusetts. And now we have Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. It still seems like even in 2023, we're still first. And as historic as this day is somewhat like, wow, we still got a lot of work to do in this country. But what do you make of today?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say congratulations to Brother Wes Moore. He is such an inspirational figure.
He really is.
He is an Army captain, fought in Afghanistan, a graduate of Johns Hopkins, just an esteemed person all around, wrote an autobiography called The Real Wes Moore that changed many lives. And I think, again, just seeing him step into this role is transformational. Although, as you've mentioned, Faraji, it is very difficult for Black candidates typically when they're running for statewide office. Things have not changed. It is very difficult. It's very expensive, I should say, to garner the votes needed, the support needed, first and foremost, to get on the ticket. And then to win a primary, it can be quite challenging. So he did that. He crossed the threshold. He beat his Republican counterpart 2-1. He got 89% of the vote of Baltimore. It says a lot, but I say we got to pray for him because there's a lot going on within the city when it comes to unemployment and other issues, crime, etc. There's more to Baltimore than that, of course. But again, he has a tall order stepping into this role.
There we go. All right, there we go. Absolutely. Of course, Baltimore near and dear to my heart, my hometown. Been doing a lot of work in the city of Baltimore. One of the big things that some people may not know, Suzette, is the fact that in Baltimore, we always felt like we were a stepchild for the state of Maryland when it comes to state politics, right? It was like Baltimore was the black sheep of the state, right? We had the high crime rate. We had the dysfunctional political system. We had the corrupt politicians. And I mean, this stuff existed all across the state of Maryland, right? But it was like Baltimore was treated like we had issues with the school system. No school district in the state of Maryland is like the school district in Baltimore, and it's across the state. And so to see that we have like a brother like Wes Moore coming into the space, and now he has a relationship with Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott, a good relationship, a strong relationship, and seeing how they're going to start working together. I think their politics certainly align more together than there are, differences of opinion. The state officials in Baltimore, you have a number of black state officials there. The schools in Baltimore, the school system. I mean, seems to be more synergy that's going to be coming with this administration, with the Moore Miller administration, than it was with the Hogan Rutherford administration.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's just because of the Governor Hogan was a Republican. He was a very popular Republican. Let me just say that. If you
know more than me about the local politics.
Yeah, very popular Republican. A lot of Democrats in Baltimore City voted for Governor Hogan. Trust and believe. Very popular Republican. But of course, he had his issues as well. So I'm wondering, do you think that? And I know you're outside of the city, but do you foresee that this is going to kind of move the state in a different direction?
Absolutely. When you are the head of a state, you need local partners, right? Yeah. We're going to be talking about mayors shortly, but mayors are where it's at, right? They are the front lines of how everyday people live their lives. So when you have a like-minded party that's the mayor of the city of Baltimore and the governor now, Wes Moore, that are aligned in a lot of ways, I think it's going to be a win-win. Hopefully, people don't create silos. And I think especially since it seems as if they are going to have good relations, it's going to help the people. That way we won't have to be focused so much on the divisive politics about, who wants who to look good and, who gets credit for what. Oftentimes politicians get sidetracked in terms of trying to create their own, fame or narrative. Wes Moore doesn't need that, right? People know who he is. He has had already this public kind of, persona. He has been on Oprah. We've seen him on
Oprah opened up for him today.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm serious. Oprah opened up for Wes Moore.
Oh, she did. Oh my goodness! I just heard what you said. Okay, so that's a big deal. So I don't think he's starstruck. I don't think he has to, a lot to prove in terms of that type of, what should I say, putting oneself in the fore just for the sake of. He doesn't need to do that. So hopefully he can focus on the work of the people, and he seems to be very committed to doing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Folks, we want you to join us in the conversation. Join us in the chat right now. Post your comments in our chat section as we're streaming live right now on YouTube and Facebook and Black Star Network. And we want you to hear your thoughts about this historic day, how in Maryland, the great state of Maryland has just sworn in their first Black governor for the state. Now, there have been other Black state leaders. Lieutenant Michael Steele was the first Black elected state leader. He's a Republican. And guess what, folks? He was on hand for today's inauguration ceremonies as well.
As he should be.
A great day. A lot of Black leaders from across various spectrums were present today to support and to be a part of this historic day. Ming Lee, my sister, you checked in and said, look, I want to know, how far have we really come as Black people since Hakeem is the first Black leader of a party in Congress? How far have we really come? I think that's a great question, Ming Lee, because, we have to, I think, Suzette, kind of do these like check-ins, especially when we have big moments like this one. How far would you say we've really come?
I think there is sometimes a perception gap in terms of, our ability to kind of make change from the grassroots level, and then what really the power structure and the established structures that really weren't designed for us to be a part of or to be in the head of are in terms of like diverse leadership. So what I mean is there are so many of us that we know within our own population, within our own communities, how outstanding, how dynamic, how capable and competent we are when it comes to leadership. But there are still places around our country that are not accustomed to, really not that they are just against it, but are not accustomed to seeing, a Black man in this position of power. It's something that is unusual or something that it doesn't occur very often. So I think sometimes we have come far, but we have to look at the demographics of the United States. We tend to see Black leaders, as we'll talk about when we talk about mayors, in metropolitan areas where we are now leading the big cities across the country. The 4 big cities are led by Black mayors. But again, when it comes to statewide elections, the demographics of a state really matter. And again, we might be in pockets like I am in Miami, where I know outstanding local leaders, but we have a lot more ground to make up when it comes to convincing our fellow Americans across party lines, across racial and ethnic lines, and even economic lines when it comes to respecting and believing in a diverse leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue to talk about what has happened, the historic day of the state of Maryland, as the first Black governor, Governor Wes Moore, Lieutenant Governor Runa Miller, have been sworn in. It is inauguration day in the state, and we continue to talk about the impact of this historic moment. So stay with us. A lot to cover as we continue the conversation right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, you're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. It is a day of history in the state of Maryland as Governor Wes Moore and Lieutenant Governor Runa Miller have both been officially sworn in, serving as Governor Wes Moore serves as the state's first Black governor. And there has been, it's such a beautiful sunny day in the state of Maryland. I want to share with you, and Keenan, I want to just show some images and give a few folks some insight as to just a little bit of what was seen and what was heard at today's inauguration of the governor. Check this out. looks like we might just be, I know Keenan's going to be working on that audio.
Amazing wife, Dawn, and to the new first babies, me and James. You are my heart. You are my soul. You're my everything. And I love you. As we stand here today, looking out over Lawyers Mall, and you can see right there the memorial to Justice Thurgood Marshall. It's impossible not to think about our past and our path. We're blocks away from the Annapolis docks, where so many enslaved people arrived in this country against their will, and we are standing in front of a Capitol that was built by their hands. We have made uneven and unimaginable progress since then, and it is a history that has been created by generations of people whose own history was lost, stolen, or never recorded. But one thing we know is that right now we are standing here in our history, in our shared history, in our collective history, made by people who over the past 2 centuries, regardless of their origin story to this state, fought and built a state and a country that works for everybody. And there are 2 people who are here today who embody that spirit, who are sitting right here next to me, 2 extraordinary women named Hema and Joy. Hema came to this country from India. Joy from Jamaica. Yeah, man. They immigrated to America with hope in their hearts, not just for themselves, but for future generations. And now, today, they are sitting here together at the inauguration of their children to become the governor and lieutenant governor of a state that helped to welcome them. Please stand up. Please stand up so everybody can see you both. To Aruna's mom, Hema, and to my mom, Joy, you epitomize everything special about this state. And you are proof that in the state of Maryland, anything is possible. Now, yes, Aruna and my portraits are going to look a little bit different from the ones that we've always seen in the Capitol. But that's not the point. This journey has never been about making history. It's about marching forward. Today is not an indictment of the past. Today is a celebration of our collective future. And today, our opportunity to begin this future is so bright, it is blinding, but only if we are intentional, inclusive, and disciplined in confronting challenges, making hard choices, and seizing this opportunity in front of us. Our state is truly remarkable. From my birthplace of Montgomery County to my adoptive home of Baltimore City, from the sandy beaches of the Eastern Shore to the rolling hills of West. Yeah, go ahead, Eastern Shore. Go ahead and make yourselves known. To the rolling hills of Western Maryland and everywhere in between. Maryland is home to spectacular natural beauty and dynamic industries and people as talented as they are determined.
Folks, that's just a few minutes of the great speech given by new Governor Wes Moore at his inauguration earlier this afternoon. I want to bring back Suzette's speech. Suzette, a couple of things. One is he made a lot of references to Black history throughout the speech. And folks, you can definitely check out the speech. There's a lot of reference to the history of chattel slavery, the great role that Maryland has played in that in the transatlantic slave trade. People are saying that is a good sign that this governor is going into office understanding the link, understanding his role in progress. How big of a moment, or how important is that for real?
Huge, because I think it takes leaders like him to be able to be comfortable with speaking about the past in a way such that it is a teachable moment and not one that is speaking of retribution or any type of division. I think, again, that's why he's so transformational when it comes to his very presence. Him having the beautiful family that was just shown. His wife, Dawn, happens to be an African-American woman, 2 beautiful children, seemingly giving us the kind of imagery, is nostalgia towards Barack Obama and what we saw with his family. I think those type of, strong figures help us in those type of discussions. And I'm glad that he's not afraid to bring it up and to speak about it with confidence and with sincerity, so that it makes others more comfortable in speaking about the past as well.
Well, it doesn't hurt either that he recognizes that his adopted home is Baltimore City.
Yes.
And so he's very, very familiar with the struggles that Black people have had in that city, the institutional racism, the systemic disenfranchisement that continues to hold Black folks back in the city of Baltimore. So I'm happy that he can at least speak to that, where a lot of elected officials on a state level, they hear about it, they may take a brush with it, but he can speak directly to that. So I'm hopeful that that some of his policies and just his overall engagement with city leaders is going to help to alleviate some of the pain and pressure that those things have put on the people. Another part is this: he mentioned the mothers, of course, his mother, Joy. I had an opportunity to talk to her and in an interview, Suzette. She wrote a book about raising Wes and some of the things that she's learned from that parenthood journey. And very, very beautiful woman. I really enjoyed the conversation with Miss Joy. He talked about Aruna's mother. I mean, this is like big shout out to my mom.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's a nice little touch there to add to the conversation, because we just don't see that too much, especially coming from the elected leaders. I mean, of course, the family side, but this is a very different. It just has a different feel to me.
Okay. I think it was beautiful. I think, shout out to the American story that he shared about, his mom being from Jamaica, represent the diaspora in the building. There's a Black experience that's shared by many who come from other nations throughout the Caribbean, South America, whose skin also is melanated and who I would call it are grafted in. Thank God. I feel the same way personally into the struggle here. And I'm glad that he is very aware of the price that was paid so that he could be doing what he is currently doing. I'm glad that he has that sense of awareness. There's that deep history that he seems to carry with him. Mom made sacrifices. His father died when he was 3 years old. He was had to move with his mother to his grandparents' house. He has a New York tie, moved up there to New York and went into a small home, but grandpa done made room, right? And he hasn't had a bed of roses type story. He's had struggle that he's had to overcome. So thinking about the sacrifices that his mother made, I'm sure he's quite aware, being raised by a Jamaican mom, that this is all about making sure your kids do better than you. And I'm sure she's very proud.
Absolutely, folks. And this is a big day, not just for Black folks, for the Indian American community, as he mentioned, with his Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, coming out of that community, the first woman of Indian descent to hold a statewide elected office. Very, very historic day. So we're going to just see. And of course, folks, I encourage you to stay tuned to the Black Star Network, because there's going to be a lot of coverage, continuing coverage of what happened not just this afternoon, but moving forward. So make sure, folks, y'all check out Roland Martin Unfiltered later on today, as I'm sure they're going to certainly be covering it as well. But this has been an historic day. I had the chance of, Suzette, very quickly, I had the chance to interview Wes Moore for when he had his book, The Other Wes Moore, for the Baltimore Book Festival. And that's how I got to learn about his story and had a chance to talk to him. And you know, just to see, it's like a crazy situation. You're like, first you're talking to somebody, you're thinking,
and then they're the governor.
You're like,
man, never say never.
We always like stayed in touch and everything. So it's like crazy that, you know, you just see how people grow and evolve, man. It's just such a beautiful situation to see manifest itself. And so, you know, congratulations to our new governor there. Congratulations to the lieutenant governor. For the state of Maryland, I think this is the great choice, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the great progress coming from the state. So that's what I'm gonna have to say, man. Big shout out to Baltimore, man. We produce leaders. We produce leaders. Trust and believe. We produce leaders in Baltimore. Y'all be like, oh, Baltimore, don't sleep on Baltimore, son. Don't sleep on Baltimore. All right, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's check in with Mayor Jamal Tito Brown of Youngstown, Ohio. We're going to check in with him as he's talking to us about the United States Conference of Mayors that's happening this week. Also giving us some insight about what's going on in his city of Youngstown, Ohio. So stay tuned for that conversation right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shots.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. All right, now we're going to switch gears from talking about statewide issues to talking about local issues. We want to discuss the winter session of the United States Conference of Mayors. And this is the session, folks, where mayors from across the city, across the country convene to discuss ways that they can, and ways and best practices for them to take their cities to the next level. Now, here on The Culture, we have done our due justice of making sure that we introduce you to mayors and to city leaders that you may not be familiar with, but these are Black leaders who are doing the great work of being on the ground, connecting with constituents, providing those necessary services, and most importantly, keeping the conversations going about everything in dispelling racial injustice and social inequity that we continue to talk about and seeing and continue to see in cities across this country. So I'm very, very excited to have a conversation with our very special guest. He serves as the mayor of the city of Youngstown, Ohio, and we're happy to have here on The Culture right here on the Black Star Network, Mayor Jamal Tito Brown. Mayor Brown, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I don't know if you have a light on. If you can put another light on, I want to make sure we see your face.
Hey, I'm kissed by the sun. I need a little more light in here. I didn't realize.
We're gonna get you set up, brother, because I want to make sure we see you.
A little bit of a shadow.
Yeah, we're gonna get that set up.
We can find another.
As our beloved mayor get himself together.
Yeah. I want you to see the full picture. I don't want you to get half the picture. What do you guys suggest? We'll come back or.
All right, we're going to get our minute set up. Let's give him a minute to get set up. And I want to bring back into the frame my sister, Suzette Speaks, TV host and attorney. And as we talk to Mayor Tito Brown. But Suzette, when we're talking about mayors, of course, we talked about the governor's role. But the mayor's role is absolutely important. And, we've had continued conversations. And I really do appreciate the fact that the United States Conference of Mayors reach out to us when they have these, their meetings throughout the year, to introduce us and for me to introduce to our watchers some of the city elected officials from cities all across this country, because mayors they don't get enough praise about the work that they do. We hear about mayors when they make crazy ass decisions. We hear about mayors when national politics come up. But we don't necessarily talk to them to understand their mindset, to understand what keeps them going. And I think that's the important part of having these conversations.
Absolutely. I think that while we were talking about the lack of representation when it comes to statewide office and when it comes to governors here in the United States, there's a different kind of trend when it comes to mayors. Right now, the top 4 cities, the largest cities in our country, are led by African-American mayors, and that includes Chicago. Lori Lightfoot, shout out to her. She has a tough re-election battle coming up. Mayor Eric Adams of New York City. We also have Sylvester Turner of Houston, and I'm missing one, Karen Bass.
Karen Bass from the great city of Los Angeles. Yes.
So looking at where sometimes we don't think we have enough diversity I was researching the difference in terms of populations and where mayors are located. There's a high percentage of Black mayors when it comes to cities with 40,000 people or more. So highly urban cities. So we've made progress. And I was going to ask our guest when he comes back about that progress, because as of 2017, about 50+% of metropolitan areas with 40,000 people or more were led by Black people. Now, the number has decreased since that survey, 2017, 2018. So I want to talk about that. I think I read it was about 40% now. So we want to make sure we're paying attention to these trends, because we have made some serious progress when it has come to leading big cities. So we want to maintain that into the future.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, Suzette, because there are about 85% of us in this country who live in metropolitan areas. Like 85% of this country's population are in your, major and in smaller cities, are in a metro area.
Coast to coast, basically.
Coast to coast, right? Coast to coast, right? So that speaks volumes about where America is and how much power and influence mayors actually have. And I'm not talking about, we could talk about Youngstown versus Chicago, but the point is that, when you go from city to city, and I've always said this, Suzette, I've traveled across the country in different places, and it's unfortunate. And I don't know if anybody else sees this, but you unfortunately know the areas of any city where Black folks reside and where white people reside. Unfortunate to see, what we consider to be the hood and what's not the hood. And, when you after you have done enough traveling and you can kind of see that level of division, it brings up so many questions about, you know, everything from systemic racism to whether the slowness of our progress, is it really a conspiracy or is it something else that's at play, right? And that's the hard part about this. You know, that is really the hard part, when you come face to face with the reality that regardless of where you may be, you might be in cities with budgets over, you know, millions of dollars. Some cities have budgets of $1 billion. When you see that, and then you still see the level of economic disparity, social inequality, when you see that these cities are still plagued by a deep impact of poverty, it's just it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and I see that from city to city. I'm like, whether you go to Miami, Los Angeles, Baltimore, New York, you're gonna see, unfortunately, Black folks struggling, and it's like, man, when can we get out of this rut that we're in?
Yeah, no, a wise man once said, the marathon continues, rest in peace, Nip. Like, when we think about it, that's why we have to be so conscious about the rollbacks that are happening when it comes to voting rights, when it comes to various legislation that we see taking its time in our halls of power. We have come far. We will all acknowledge that we have come quite far, but we still have a ways to go, because there is a legacy at play here that was corrected for about maybe 50 years in terms of our country's history. When we look back at the legacy from, you know, the Jim Crow era, from pre-Civil War, many would argue as to what you're talking about, and the policies that right up into the 1960s kept Black folks out of economic empowerment, or tools for economic empowerment, buying homes, getting bank loans. You know, predatory practices were being used by the government. So it is eye-opening, to say the least, that unfortunately, you know, we still have pockets across our country that remind us of this legacy and how much more we have to go when it comes to creating policy and holding our policymakers to account when it comes to, you know, where funding is being allocated, what governors versus mayors are doing in terms of funding distribution. I mean, we're looking at, you know, the water crisis in Birmingham. We're looking at all these issues that I'm like, is this really happening still? Where we are fighting for local resources for predominantly Black areas in our country. It is sad. But there are people that are fighting alongside us. Allies have been vocal. It's not just Black voices that are being raised against these disparities, but we know we have a lot more work to do.
Absolutely. Let me see. I think we do have our Mayor Tito Brown back with us. Mr. Mayor, okay, that's better. Here we go, Mr. Mayor. How you feeling today, sir? We got him. No audio. We got him in.
We can see you. We can hear you, Mr. Mayor.
We can see you, Mr. Mayor. But can you hear us? Man. All right, we're going to try to do this. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, Suzette. And folks, when we get back, you know, hopefully we can get the audio connected to Mayor Jamal Tito Brown of Youngstown, Ohio. Folks, stick around. We're going to have a great conversation with our beloved mayor to talk to us about the U.S. Conference of Mayors winter session that's going to be happening in Washington, D.C. this week, as well as what's going on in the city of Youngstown and so much more. So stay with us. That conversation will happen next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture. We have been talking about the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and this week, folks, they are going to be hosting their 91st winter session, the session where mayors from across the city convene in Washington, D.C. to discuss things that are happening in their cities, and most importantly, best practices, ways to take their cities to the next level to get the progress for marginalized communities and so much more. Now, this U.S. Conference of Mayors has been led by the president, their president from Miami, Florida, Mayor Francis X. Suarez. And this 4-day conference will host numerous congressional and administration officials, including Secretary of State Antony Blinken and so many more, as mayors will convene from around the country. This is an organization, a U.S. Conference of Mayors, is a nonprofit organization with a population of 30,000 or more. There are nearly 1,400 cities in the countries today, and each city is represented in the conference by its chief elected official, the mayor. We're going to have a conversation with Mayor Jamal Tito Brown, the great mayor of the city of Youngstown, Ohio, as we talk to him about what's going on with USCM. And of course, I got my sister Suzette Speaks joining us today here on the show. All right, we got Mayor Tito Brown. There we go.
Am I out of frame? Or let me get in frame.
Yes, brother.
Wait.
Yes, man. There
Now
we go. Boom.
You look great.
Yeah, that's not quite, but I'll live with it. We got to live with it.
Yeah, let's live with it. Let's live. Mr. Man, you know how to adjust. You know how to adjust, sir.
You got to be flexible in my position.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Man, first and foremost, on behalf of the culture here in Black Star Network, we thank you so much for your time today to just spend a few minutes with us to discuss the work that you're doing and the impact you're looking to make. First, talk to us about this U.S. Conference of Mayors and why your city has decided to be a part of this great convening.
I appreciate it. It's a good opportunity for me to be back on again with you guys. I think I talked to you guys when we were Reno. One of the reasons that we are engaged in the U.S. Conference of Mayors for Youngstown, Ohio, is because there's a lot of issues out there for cities, and a lot of times we find that we're not the only ones dealing with those issues. No matter what your population is, we all tend to have some of the same issues. No matter if you got 1 million people or 50,000 people, we all typically worry about the trash pickup, the barking dog, the home issues, the affordable housing. So many of those issues we work on here. We talk this morning. We talked a little bit about coming to the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We kind of steal from one another. We cut and paste. We get ideas. We kind of swap recipes, if you would use that terminology. So it's been a great thing for the city of Youngstown. We come and we learn from other mayors who've been doing it for some time, and also we get a chance to give input on what we've been able to do in our term as mayor of the city of Youngstown.
So, Mr. Mayor, when we look at Youngstown and how things are going, first and foremost, talk to us about some of the big triumphs that your administration has been able to make in the city of Youngstown. And then we could talk about some of the things that you're still working on, some of the challenges.
Yeah. One of the things we had to do coming into this administration, I'm just starting my 6th year as the mayor of the city of Youngstown. I'm the 51st mayor of Youngstown, but only the 2nd African-American mayor to serve in this position. And one of the things we wanted to do was restore integrity and transparency back to the city hall. And we had lost that. We had got along with the way previous administrations kind of learned. They thought they were the city and they didn't realize they still work for the people. And one of them, our mantras that we wouldn't cave the money, power, and politics. And we've been pretty close to doing that. We stay close to I tell everybody every day is a job interview for me with the citizens of Youngstown. And every 4 years I get a job evaluation. So it's been one of those pieces. We've been turning the tables, but we've been building relationships at the state, the federal, and the national level. That Youngstown's at the table when we're looking for federal dollars, when we're given opportunities to build our youth, our seniors. This is a great opportunity for us to continue our push to make our city a great place to live.
Absolutely. And then, Suzette, I definitely want to extend the invitation for you to jump in as well. So, but Mr. Mayor, talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that you're seeing right now in your city.
One of the challenges, we talk about all the jobs that are available with the new CHIPS Act and the new Intel facility that's going to come to Columbus, Ohio. Columbus is about 2 hours away from the city of Youngstown. We're looking at the workforce being ready for that new industry. I don't know if you guys are old enough or you remember the Jetsons. We talk about, electric vehicles and flying vehicles.
Of course, sir.
That industry is here. It's not a matter of if it's coming. It's now that it's here. But we've got to get that workforce trained. And one of the things I find that we've got to start meeting people where they are. I get people ask me all the time, Mr. Mayor, I need a job. And there's 3 questions I'll ask. Can you pass a drug test? Do you have a resume? And do you have a driver's license? Many of them tell me 2 out of 3. And you'd probably be amazed at what the one thing that they don't have is a driver's license. And if we're going to look at economic mobility and get individuals ready for the workforce that's coming, they've got to, 1, be able to get there. 2, they've got to be, hireable, but also we've got to make sure that they can continue to grow while they're in this position. So we've come up with a program called License to Success, where we're working with our private investors who are investing dollars. We just received a grant last year through the U.S. Conference of Mayors while we were here. It's called through DollarWise. And we received a grant where we can go find individuals who, if we remove the fines, they can get their license back. They can get back to being productive citizens, and they're more productive and more attractive to an employer if they have their license. So that's one of the reasons we come to this conference, to find out what funds are out there. And we've got multiple individuals that are taking advantage of this opportunity, because fines is a cycle. Once you kind of get in the system, individuals who are driving under suspension don't mean they're going to stop driving. Now they're just going to drive under suspension, and the monies and fines can kind of put them in a rabbit hole that they can't get out of. And we've been able to help remove some of those barriers to get them back into the workforce.
Absolutely. Suzette, what's your question, Suzette?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you again for being here. I was reading online about the percentages of Black mayors who are in charge of cities of 40,000 or more. And I saw online that since about 2017, 2018, that number has been decreasing. Do you think the presence of leadership at the local level who happen to be African American is helping the American public get more comfortable when it comes to Black leadership? And can mayors be a feeder for statewide office holders?
That's a great thing, and I don't know if you heard me when I said it, that I'm the second African American mayor, but there's been 51 mayors. I'm the 51st, so there's been multiple mayors, and I think that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to train, give opportunity for individuals to see that African American mayors, African American leaders can do well in the positions. People want to know they can trust you with their money, and they can trust you to represent them well. And that's what we've got to do for me, for the next generation. I say that I'm not going to be doing this all my life. I don't plan on being mayor until the day I die. I want to come off the field, and I want to come off and help the next generation. I'll help coach them and get them ready for the game, or I'll just go in the stand and become a fan. But I think we've got to make sure we have the bench, but we also get individuals in our town, in our county. We've never had an African American elected to our countywide. So state is great, but we've got to break those barriers in the city of Youngstown, in our Mahoney counties where we live. We're 88 counties in the state of Ohio. We're one of the few counties that's not had an African American countywide. So those ceilings we have to continue to push and kick open so that the next generation can break them down and continue climbing higher.
Mr. Mayor, do you feel like the sentiment, and to add to what Suzette brought up, but do you feel like that Black folks have a positive or negative sentiment about local Black leadership in light of, I come from the city of Baltimore, so I'm sure you probably heard about some of our challenges there, and but do you feel like Black folks in particular have a positive or a negative sentiment when it comes to local Black leadership?
Yeah, I think overall sentiment it's positive. When you get a chance for individuals to see individuals like myself, I'm born and raised right here in the city of Youngstown, and they, many of those have had a chance to see me raised. I'm educated here, but also I think we can be one of the biggest critics to our community. We kind of we'll put the spotlight on the African American mayor a lot more than they will the white mayor, and I'm not sure why that happens. I think it's almost every day they want to test you. They want to test to see if you're really genuine in what you're doing, or you're going to do something different than what you said you would be doing. And I think that's where we've got to really stay. If you're going to get into this leadership role as an African American mayor or any elected official, you've got to be genuine. You've got to tell people this is what you see is what you get, but also you got to be able to give them the direct yes or the direct no, and don't string them along. And I think once people see that you're genuine and they realize that you have a heart for the community you work for, makes the job a lot easier. But don't give them that commercial retail politics. They will kind of sift you out. So I think the issue, what we need to do is make sure we stay true to who we are, but we understand that we're going to be put under a microscope. There's no Me Too clause for African American leaders.
Ain't that the truth? Mr. Mayor, very quickly, and I'm going to get some more questions from our online culture crew as folks are watching. But the first question we got from our audience is from my guy, Willie Frazier. He said, Mr. Mayor, it seems to fight for equality has to be taken to big corporations in order to get some monetary equality. What's your view on this? And how do you plan to bring some equity in your state?
One of the things we look at is our utility industry. Individuals, when we talk about utilities that we pay, they're not there. They can put a hike on anything. And a lot of times they want to run, let's say they want to run a high voltage line through your community because it's going to help their bottom line, but it won't help your community. And we've taken on a couple of our utility companies in the city of Youngstown to say our people deserve better. Also, we look at when we do work in the city of Youngstown, we also look at the equity and the fair. How is this going to affect our community? Is it going to be fair? And oftentimes we just don't look and say because they have dollars or they're doing one thing for our community. My question is always, how is it going to impact and how is it going to benefit our community? And a lot of times I'm in the room and I'm the guy having a bad day, but I have to ask those questions because the citizens I work for deserve me to ask it 2 or 3 times so that I make sure that I'm getting the right answer, because I don't want to make sure that I'm sitting in this seat and the community that I serve are not being served well.
Absolutely. Look, Mr. Mayor, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue the conversation with you. We're going to continue the conversation with Suzette, and folks continue to post your questions in the chat as we check in with Mayor Jamal Tito Brown of the great city of Youngstown, Ohio. Stay with us. A lot more conversation right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back. We've been talking to the mayor of Youngstown, Ohio, Mayor Jamal Tito Brown, as he is talking to us about some of the work of the United States Conference of Mayors and their winter session that is happening this week in Washington, D.C. And we've been talking about Mayor Brown, talking about everything from race relations to what's going on in the city, to the trials and the joys of the work that he's doing in Youngstown, Ohio. And more importantly, the impact that it's making on our community. We've also been checking in with Culture Crew member Suzette Speaks as we've been having this conversation. And folks, I want you to post your questions in the chat, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or Black Star, blackstarnetwork.com, so we can continue to have these discussions with Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, when we look at the situation, we're talking about race, and Suzette, love to get your take on this. Like, when we're talking about race relations, like today, we're celebrating the historic inauguration of Governor Wes Moore in Maryland. And I'm wondering, many people are saying that is historic, but it also kind of falls in a space of being symbolic. And I'm wondering, how do we make the most of this moment and most of those opportunities? You mentioned, of course, you're only the second Black mayor of your beloved city. So how do we make sure that we can rally not just Black folks, but other folks from outside the community to see that Black leadership is leadership for Black people, but it's also leadership for all people if given the opportunity, if given the chance?
Yeah, like you said, it's this historic piece for us today. But the question, it can't be, is just the first, it can't be the last. And I think what the governor has to do is to make sure he takes the position that he has right now and to make sure that he's been able to mold and shape the culture of the voters that voted him in. The first one, say, you know what, you can do the job. Two, now you need to make sure that when he says the next leadership needs to look like and represent the community that where they live, that means that he should be able to, do a lot of mentoring. His cabinet, those that he hires, should look like the community and the state where he's the governor at. And also make sure before he leaves there, He's paved the way for the next generation because somebody paved the way for him to become the first, but he needs to pave the way so he won't be the last.
Right, right. Now, when we look at the race relation piece, like our Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who's put up this new anti-white supremacy bill, she's putting forth put forth to Congress, which helps to kind of crack down on hate crimes. Talk to us a little bit about your efforts to deal with hate crimes in your city, and to create a more secure space for Black folks and just folks from various communities, whether you're talking about Black, whether you're talking about Latino, Native American, Asian American communities. What are some of the things that your administration is doing around that issue of hate crimes?
One of the things we focus on, and I mentioned it earlier, that first of all, we make, from my office, I make sure that my cabinet has a diverse connection to the community. They're involved in the community, but also we've got to know that, hate's been around for some time. As people look at me and they look at my skin, when I walk in the room, they're not looking pick me out as the mayor. They're looking at my skin first, and then I have to give them the title of who I am. So we need to make sure that when we enter in that room, or if we get I talk about on our law enforcement, if we feel that individuals are using hate to be a bully or to overcome or to instill fear into the citizens, we take that very serious. But we're also making sure that when we get out in the community, that we talk about the real talk. We really, when I get into a room, I'll talk to in the ward. I say, you guys are used to something different in your community because of your culture you live in. And now that's not going to be the same, but you can't, take that out and make it a rage and anger. So we talk about, working together and realizing once we get a chance to know one another, no matter what side of town or what ward you live in our community, we often find out we have the same issues. But I focus on, trying to break those barriers down. And a lot of times it's because when I walk in the room, if you don't know me, you don't know if I'm the mayor or who I am walking in the room. And once I can open that door and individuals will let me in, we make sure that we focus that there's fairness across the board for everybody. And and I mentioned our staff, when we make decisions and when we do proposed legislation at city council, we look at, being fair, equitable, making sure that we focus on the people that the least vulnerable, the vulnerable community that we're focusing on as well.
Absolutely. Suzette, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I'm curious as to what the mayor has to say in terms of who's getting it right, because I feel like every mayor must be admiring one mayor or two across this country. Who are you looking to in terms of solution-based leadership, African-American or otherwise? And if you could wave a wand and change anything that sometimes, the wheels of government sometimes cannot change, what would you wishfully thinking want to take on, or a challenge that you would like to resolve?
Actually, let's take the last question about waving the wand. I think we all come and try to find that one solution that really will help our community. But when I look at mayors across the nation, I look at them that can really, they go from cradle to career, where they're being able to educate their community, not just about the history that people are talking about, but the history that we're living through. I heard you guys mention about, living through for me, my family was raised in the South. Now, my mother remembers the Freedom Riders. So I look at mayors who can really take on that initiative. We talk about different mayors who focus on, when we looked at rules and regulations that were put in place in the past about housing, and now they're coming to really harm the African American and minority community when they talk about there's LLCs out there. They're private corporations that are coming in and buying up communities and raising the rate or the rent or selling or flipping the homes for 4 times as much as it's worth. I look at mayors, LeVar Stoney. We were just in a conversation with him about what they're doing in Richmond and how it's affecting his people. That's gentrification, but also it's, we talk about what's affordable. So if I had a magic wand, I would really want to focus on education, housing, but also the one piece we're missing, I don't know if we've had a chance to really dive into, is the mental health of our community. We can look at a lot of the anger and bitterness that's happening across our nation. It's focused on mental health and a lack of mental health education.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, we got a question from one of our online culture crew members. McCole checked in and said, Question for Mayor Brown. Some people tend not to vote in local elections, mayor, city attorney, etc. What do you believe needs to be done to increase voting in local elections, especially, Mr. Mayor, as we're having a national conversation about voting rights, protecting voting rights? The president has gone on record to say earlier this week for Dr. King's Day, he went to Ebenezer Baptist Church and said, yeah, I did not make, he didn't come through on the promise to get the voting rights bill passed and to make sure it gets the type of support that it needed to get. So on a local level, what does that look like to make sure that folks can feel like they can come out to vote, and more importantly, that right can be protected?
I think that educating our voters to realize that there's no off season. If you want to be a true champion of electing individuals or voting for individuals, there's no off season. Many individuals want to go and vote for the president or the governor, but when it gets down to your county and your council and your mayor, we kind of fall off. We don't realize that's important. But I think it's the reverse. I think you should make sure that in your local elections, you should be voting more often than not, because you'll see, the council member, you'll see the mayor. Not too often you might run into the governor. Very rarely will you see your congressman or your senator. And who can say, how many times have any of us run into the president at the barbershop? So there's no off season. Individuals must be out there voting every time. And I think the more we vote and we can be consistent, they respect your vote. When they know that you're not going to vote and you're only voting on the presidentials or the governors, then they can count on you not coming out. The less we vote, the more we water down our power to vote. And I can tell you that this is actually my third time running for mayor. The first time I ran for mayor, I lost by 142 votes. And I'm here to tell you that every vote counts. And that was only 2 to 3 more precincts that I need, 2 voters per precinct. And I'll be honest with you, I found everybody that said, oh, I'm going to go and vote for you. I'm going to vote for you. I said, you didn't do it? No, I got time, right? I said, time has run out, and they didn't vote. And if I would have had 2 per precinct, I would have turned that race around and won by 500. So every vote counts, and there's no off season in voting.
Wow. Hey, Suzette, when you hear a story like that, you really do think to yourself, like, damn, every vote does actually count.
Mm-hmm.
You only lost by 142 votes.
Yeah, this would be my 3rd term as mayor. I'm working on my 2nd term. However, the first time I missed by 142 votes. We were outspent 3-1. But I made sure my basis of working campaigns is going door to door, meeting people, and really giving them a chance to understand that if I hear your needs and I can help you, we will help you.
Wow. That's a powerful story right there, ain't it, Suzette?
Absolutely. I mean, if you were alive during the Florida recount, you know how close elections can be.
I was sick during the Florida recount.
We know every vote counts here.
Yeah. I had heart palpitations for weeks at a time. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know
hanging chads and all that.
That was my political blood running through me, not realizing it was boiling.
Yes, imagine. Sir, I agree with you on so many of the points that you just made, and I wanted to ask you to emphasize for our viewers why the mayor might actually have more influence over your day-to-day life than the president. I think sometimes, we hear the saying, all politics is local. Mm-hmm. However, I don't know if as an electorate, the body, the people, we understand the impact of local government. While we are always seeing the president and others on television, how much more local government affects their lives.
Yeah, you know what? I always tell people that the mayor in the state of Ohio, we're the only elected official that our responsibility is the day-to-day operation of the city. We've got to make sure the fire, police, health, garbage. We even, whether entertainment, we're responsible for those things. So when I tell people that you have a great influence on what happens in your community is being engaged and knowing what your mayor's doing. But for me, we look at when we talk about housing, they're not looking for the governor to help housing. They're looking at the mayor. If you look at, crime and safety in your community, they're not asking the governor or the president. They're looking at the mayor. So you've got to, and I define mayor in 5 words. And I learned this from coming to the conference. 5 words describe what a mayor, that's our job as mayor. Find a problem, solve it. So no matter how big or how small the problem is, when Ms. Johnson calls, for me, it may seem really small when she calls my office, But to her, it's the biggest thing in front of her, and she can't see past it unless I try to help her. And a lot of times people say, I can't believe that they called you, Mayor, for that issue. I say, who else would they call? If I don't have the answer, my job as the mayor to find somebody who can get them an answer or get them some resolution to their situation.
And I want to, I'm glad that Suzette posed that question, because it leads me to this final question, and we got a few seconds left with you, Mr. Mayor. But when we look at politicians like celebrities, when we look at politicians like rock stars, right? The type of leadership that you're describing is more servant leadership. It's more grassroots. It's more, look, I work for you versus y'all work for me. How important is that in terms of, Black folks really producing leaders and getting leaders from the next generation for the next generation? How important is that philosophy?
I tell you, people can't forget where they came from, first of all. And as an elected official, please, we can't ever forget who we are. Now, it gets great. People say, how do you like it being mayor? I've been doing this, working on my 6 years mayor. I've never had a Groundhog Day. No day's the same. Every day's different. It's very exciting, but you can't lose focus on why you went in there. And I'll tell people, don't come into the office looking to take anything away when you leave. Come in with nothing, leave with nothing, but leave a lot more than you came and giving it to the community. So those are some things, it does have its, and at home, it's hard for me to go to the grocery store without individuals stopping me. It's hard for me to go to the barbershop without somebody snuggling up to me and wanting to know what I heard last night on, this is what I missed. So you take that with you, and individuals say, I imagine that gets tiring. But then one day when you run into someone and they'll tell you, you know what, I called your office and you helped me, and that meant so much to me. So every time you'll get a couple pushbacks, you'll run into that one person who you stop to talk to, and you could have just said, hey, ma'am, I'm busy, I gotta go. I always stop and talk. You typically want to know their name and where they live. That gives me a good, indication of their citizens of the community, and it helps you continue doing your job.
Absolutely. Mayor Jamal Tito Brown, it's certainly a pleasure. We thank you for your time this afternoon as you speak on the U.S. Conference of Mayors winter session and the great work that you're doing in Youngstown, Ohio. What information you want to put out there for our national audience, Mr. Mayor?
One of the things I always say, if you want to get involved at being an elected official, you don't have to be elected to get involved. Start volunteering, get engaged in your community. And those who are out there, just know that if you need help, start with your local level, because there's a lot of funding that we're learning today that are coming out there, that it's out there. And if you're looking for jobs, there's plenty out there. You just got to take a couple steps forward. And if everybody can't do it for you, you've got to do something for yourself. So I appreciate you guys for having me on. I always enjoy the questions. I look forward to catching you maybe the next time.
Absolutely. Mayor Tito Brown for checking in here on The Culture. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We truly appreciate you, sir. Keep up the great work.
You guys be safe, be kind. Most often, just be yourselves.
There it is right there. All right, folks. Man, oh, man. Folks, yeah, real quick, Suzette. That's why I love talking to the local officials, man.
He knows his stuff. I'm rocking with Mayor Brown. I'm rocking with him. I would trust him to run a city and more than that. So right. I love that. He said he missed it by 142. Ouch. So yes, elections matter.
But he's in it now, though, Suzette. He's in it now.
Again. So now he got an extra term. So I'm like, okay, that's all right. We got you now, and you know what you're doing. That's fantastic. I think everything he said, is so valid when it comes to, making sure you have that servant's heart. I wanted to compare it to more almost like a social work foundation in terms of that type of job. Absolutely. You got to love people. You got to want to help solve their problems. As he said, find a problem and solve it. But mayors are really on the front lines. And I'm so glad that there are so many African-American mayors representing so well, again, of the 4 major cities across this country. They have hard jobs, but I believe in them. And hopefully, they prove themselves accordingly.
Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation. Let's talk about that bill that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has put out there about anti-white supremacy bill dealing with hate crimes and so much more. Stay with us. The discussion continues right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, it's now time for us to have a different conversation about white supremacy and how one representative in Congress is doing her part to make sure that we must never forget the disastrous and destructive impact of the philosophy. We're talking about Texas Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. Now, Congresswoman Lee has put it out there that she wants to lead the charge against white supremacy. She has put forth and introduced a bill called Leading Against White Supremacy Act. Take a look at this. This is the report from the Root folks about the bill. The bill is intended to prevent and prosecute white supremacy-inspired hate crime and conspiracy to commit white supremacy-inspired hate crime. The biggest impact of the bill is how it defines conspiracy to commit a hate crime. Under the conspiracy section, a conspiracy to engage in white supremacy-inspired hate crime shall be determined to exist if at least one person engages in planning or committing a white supremacist hate crime and the other person disseminates white supremacist information, including on social media, which means people who post white supremacy conspiracy theories online could potentially face prosecution under the bill. Let's bring back our culture crew member, Suzette Speaks, as we take the look at the headline there, how Sheila Jackson Lee is looking to stop white supremacy in this path, especially as it relates to hate crimes. But Suzette, you are an attorney. What does this mean in terms of the prosecution of hate crimes? Does this add more teeth to it, to this effort? I mean, because this is very, very interesting.
Yes, it's a pity, again, that this cannot probably pass in today's Congress because the Republicans control the House and it's not likely to pass. But nonetheless, I think it's important that bills like this are introduced because it changes the conversation and shifts the focus of some of our representatives in terms of what should we be focused on and what we're hearing from the people and the concerns that they have should be addressed. Now, Sheila Jackson Lee in her district is a predominantly Black district out of Texas. And when she proposed this is the second time, she is looking with an eye towards what is happening in today's political climate. That is, there are people that are promoting an ideology that has become very dangerous, so much so that we just had a form of the very thing she is trying to legislate against, happen in Arizona, where a local official was her house was shot up because of folks who want to promote this type of ideology. Now, I am a nerd. I went ahead and looked at the actual law itself and tried to read it. Not very long of a bill. You guys can check it out, Google it. But it does expand. It seems to kind of want to expand the nature of what is deemed a hate crime, but also separate a new separate category of hate crime when it comes to white supremacy. As an attorney, I'm looking at it with kind of, I love detail, but it's very broad. When I read it, I was like, wow, this is a larger body of people that can be charged underneath this bill if it were to pass and become a federal law. That is that the provision specifically that I'm very interested in is the one about conspiracy, and it defines conspiracy. And you guys know sometimes I'm going to give a broad overview, but when you are involved in a conspiracy, for example, felony murder, you can be charged even if you're not the person that, pulled the trigger, if you were a part of the conspiracy to begin with. In this case, her law makes anyone who has disseminated such materials as defined as white supremacy online, on social media, in spaces, and the language of the bill, I'm just summarizing here, in spaces where they know that folks who are prone to radicalization can be found. Those people who disseminate this type of material can be charged in terms of the conspiracy. So it is very broad, because I was like, how far can this go? I'm glad she has brought this to the fore. Again, I would say it needs definitely some debate in terms of how far, whether they want to increase the extent to which someone can be prosecuted under this, or even decrease it. I would say to whatever degree, it is a valid attempt to try to curb some of what we're seeing around the country.
So this is about if someone makes the act of committing a hate crime, right? This is about that level of prosecution, not necessarily. Based on my understanding, this is not a bill about the philosophy of white supremacy itself, though.
It would be a crime inspired by white supremacy.
Right. So it's taking us like back to like, okay, what was the motivation for the crime?
Right.
Then if it finds that the motivation for the crime was coming out of a white supremacist, ideology, then it moves forward. So this is revolutionary in that space, because it's not just looking at the crime in it of itself. It's like, let's go back and see, okay, what was the motivation? And I think, the only reason I'm bringing that up, Suzette, is because I want people to understand the clarity of it, because there's always been laws on the books about hate crimes. We know that. But this is taking a little step further and say, if you were inspired by, say, some white supremacist works, and then you read a book, you read a pamphlet, you go online, you read some information, and then you commit a crime after that point, then you will be prosecuted. And then the person who was actually posting that information online may also be prosecuted.
Possibly so. Yeah, that's why I say it's very broad. The way I'm reading it, again, it's open to interpretation. I'm sure the authors can explain more than me, but just reading it on the congressional website there, I was like, wow, this is a very expansive law. So there's going to be some challenge. I'm going to say it in terms of, just for argument's sake, what others who believe in, again, our far-reaching First Amendment, freedom of speech. They're going to say even hate speech is protected speech. There are going to be people that say, if it's in furtherance of a crime, however, that will distinguish the use of this type of speech. But yeah, like I said, it's a very broad law, because it can capture in it not only the person committing the crime, but anyone who inspired them through materials. And it talks about social media included. It uses the word social media in the bill, as well as other printed material or any other disseminated material. The persons who authored that can also be prosecuted under this law. What I find again is that it is good to use the word white supremacy because in other hate crime laws that's not mentioned, and I think it kind of brings the gravity of this specific type of mens rea mindset, intention, because again these type of laws are hard to also prosecute because you have to try to show evidence that says the person is thinking a certain way and is being motivated a certain way. Again, you can use the emails, you can use text message, you can find a way to do it. Prosecutors have done it. So, but defining it by that broad term again in the bill itself, I don't see how it just uses the word white supremacy. There are a couple of examples that are given there, but it's broad. That's my only interpretation of what I'm seeing so far. It's very broad. So I don't know if this as a bill, it can always be tweaked. It's not a law at this time, but right. I think the purpose of it, I am definitely 100% behind understanding that type of behavior sometimes, has been swept under the rug, and she is trying to, and again, just based on the reading of this bill, single it out to say, no, this is also a type of hate speech that should be outlawed, or an act, I should say, that should increase the penalty that anyone who commits a crime, receives if this is their motivation.
So, I mean, this is, again, going back to the way you describe it, because I agree with you wholeheartedly, very broad, very wide ranging. It can actually impact not just the perpetrator of the crime. It can also impact, if you go on I'm thinking like if you go on a platform like a Reddit, or some platform like that where hate crimes or that level of racist speech is used, that they can be held liable as well. So those social media platforms, and this is the big push I see happening, Suzette, that you're now going to have these social media platforms, whether it's like a Parler or Reddit or some of these other smaller ones, or even the big ones, Twitter, Facebook, where they're going to have to be called to the table or called to the carpet to even say, why did you allow this information to be published on your platform? Like there's going to possibly, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too far down the road.
No, I'm looking for it. I wish I had sent it to you. Here it is. Let me put the link in the back chat.
Okay.
But yeah, as I read it, and we can put it up because I want to be sure I'm quoting correctly.
This is interesting.
So that what I see there is it talks about it could involve two or more persons as it defines conspiracy.
Right.
A conspiracy to engage in white supremacy inspired hate crime shall be determined to exist between two or more people engaged in the planning, development, preparation, or perpetration of a white supremacy inspired hate crime, or between two or more people who are engaged in the planning, development, preparation, or perpetration. And this is, I'm going to go to B. Part BI was published on social media platform or by other means of publication with the likelihood that it would be viewed by persons who are predisposed to engaging in any action in furtherance of white supremacy inspired hate crime and who are susceptible to be encouraged to engage in actions in further. I think that's so broad, personally. So where does it stop? It doesn't necessarily implicate the platform that carries it.
Okay.
I don't know. Again, there are so many questions I have after reading it. I was like, ooh, I would like to add this one.
Right. And I mean, look, like you say,
a bill is a draft, right?
It's a bill. It's still being tweaked. So, there's still a lot of ground to cover, but it's the idea of putting it out there, because now it gets to this domino effect where you start to say, okay, I remember the movie. Y'all remember the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise? This is probably
that's an oldie but a goodie.
It's an oldie but goodie, right? A lot of people, I think, we all kind of checked it out. But remember that the agency that he worked for was called Pre-Crime.
Yes.
So they would arrest people. This is crazy. This always stuck out in my mind, Suzette, where they would pretty much arrest people for even thinking of doing the crime before they actually commit the crime. Like they would stop the crime before it happens.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, like, damn, like that's what popped in my head when I read the information. I was like, so now we're going into the intention, like you mentioned, the intention of a person based upon, and that opens the door
Right.
Like if you consume information about consume information of a certain ideology that could potentially influence your thinking and your behavior and your overall actions.
Yeah.
That you could be prosecuted. That you could be.
Yeah, it's very serious. And again, I think that's her point. One of her intentions behind writing it is to make it a deterrent. She's trying to say, think twice before you disseminate any type of
like literally think twice.
Yes, because white supremacy ideology is not one, according to this bill, that we want to promote here in the United States. But again, I would tweak it. That's just me personally. Again, those who drafted it, I'm sure can come speak in terms of their own intent. But I do understand what she's trying to do, which is to call out this specific type of mentality when it comes to performance or perpetration of a hate crime. I understand what she's trying to do, and there are many ways to do it, whether it's through this bill or others. But I applaud Congresswoman Jackson Lee for trying to at least bring it to the fore so that her colleagues can pay attention and maybe, whether it's this bill or another bill, try to address some of what we're seeing across our country.
Absolutely. This is fascinating to say the least, Suzette. And I'm really interested to see. I mean, again, you're right, and I think you're on point. This thing is not going to pass with considering the power of the Republicans in the House at this point. But that's why we're having this conversation, because I think if more people understood that now we're talking about getting to the root of a situation, right? Like, and that's the important part about this. When we're talking about white supremacy is often presented to us as this monster living in the hillsides of America, and that comes down and just like touches people and acts, when in fact each one of us are always vulnerable to learning, and it doesn't have to be white supremacy, but any type of hate material, that we're all vulnerable to be exposed to hate material that can eventually influence us to carry out some crime rooted in that material that we just took in. And I think that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes about where we are in this country, that we do have to get to the root of it. And if this bill doesn't, quote unquote, put social media platforms on the stand, I think we're getting closer and closer to that point where we're going to have to start looking at, hey, Facebook, hey, Twitter, hey, YouTube, hey, Parler, hey, Reddit, all these platforms, we're going to have to say, you know what? If you allow this to happen, then this is going to be the consequences of that action.
Just to add on, yes, if it comes to someone committing a crime,
right,
after ingesting it, then they will be implicated, and it's something that they're going to have to really consider going forward.
So for the shooter in the Buffalo, New York, the Tops shooting,
yes,
where he posted his manifesto before committing that hate crime,
right,
then we would look at that platform where he posted it, and where I think it was like 20 people or so were able to see it, because again, it opens the door that if 20 people are able to see it, he's live streaming it, all of these things are happening, then essentially he's passing on this
great example. No, great example. And whoever he ingested that radicalized him also could, in fact, be implicated. Yeah.
That's a perfect word. So he's passing on that level of radicalization to the next person. And I mean, folks, another movie, then we're going to close it out.
This could be so deep.
This is so deep. But remember that Denzel Washington movie where I think he was a detective, and I think it was Bones.
Training Day?
No, not Training Day.
Okay.
But he was a detective, and he was trying to figure out how to stop the spirit of evil that goes from person to person. And I know Culture Crew, y'all probably know.
Let me look in the chat.
Look in the chat. There's that movie where he was trying to, like, if a person touches you, you get a spirit of evil.
Oh, I know the movie you're talking about. I don't know the name of it.
Remember that movie?
I don't know. Somebody
and it's like just like that, like,
and it passed and it transferred. Fallen.
There it is.
Good job.
Fallen. Big shout out to Keenan for that one. Fallen. And it was like that spirit. Like, if you're passing on this knowledge of and radicalizing people, but you don't necessarily, you may not do the action, but you're the one responsible for a person to become radicalized where they're doing the action, you should be held responsible.
Yeah. That's what she's trying to get to. You may
That's
not,
heavy.
pull the trigger, but you were responsible for disseminating and grooming this person into this type of thought process. And they, as a result, went out and carried out this kind of crime. She wants to attach extra penalty to that by law.
That's
so I
right.
understand exactly what she's trying to do.
Very, very heavy. We're going to keep our eyes on that. Folks, look, we got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's talk about Black Twitter, and I'm going to share with you how Black Twitter is being celebrated, and it continues to be one of the most influential components of one of the most influential communities on social media. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Okay, for our final conversation for this afternoon, we want to talk about Black Twitter. Now, Black Twitter, if you're not familiar with social media, Black Twitter is that community on Twitter where, when Black issues come up, when any major issues come up, Black folks take the conversation about the event to a whole new space and level. And Suzette, how active are you on Twitter, Suzette?
I'm a consumer. I don't really post a lot. I am so
I don't even think we're friends on Twitter.
Are we not friends on Twitter? I check Twitter for news when I want information on a topic. So when I'm like, oh, what happened? Let me go on Twitter. That's how I use Twitter, but I'm not like active in terms of always messaging, but I know how powerful it is. I have friends who are literally, some people have their app, some people are Facebook people, some people are Instagram people, some people are TikTok people, but some people are Twitter people. I'm not one, but I do respect the platform and I understand how important it is to our community.
That's interesting because I feel like there's also a generational divide when it comes to Twitter. Like you have older people who are saying like people in their 30s, they're like, I'm not on Twitter as I used to be. I'm on IG, I'm on Snap, I'm on TikTok. I enjoy Twitter, Facebook, and IG. Like I can't, after a while, I'm not trying to be on 60,000 different,
it will wear you out.
It will wear you out. But Twitter continues to be a major community on the social media space because oftentimes it's Black Twitter that's driving the conversation, especially the cultural conversations when there are big moments in our culture, when there are big moments in our history. And so right now, there will be a new docuseries that's going to be premiering on Hulu that's going to talk about the rise of Black Twitter. It's going to be directed by the Insecure executive producer, Prentice Penny, who you see there. It's going to be a 3-part docuseries for Hulu, and it's based on Jason Parham's story for Wired, A People's History of Black Twitter. Now, take a look at what was reported here as we look at this 3-part series. It says that based on Jason Parham's story for Wired, People's History of Black Twitter, the project follows the rise, the movements, the voices, and the means that made Black Twitter an influential and dominant force in nearly every aspect of American political and cultural life. According to Princess Penny, he said, "For those who know me, you know how much love, respect, fear, and admiration I have for Black Twitter. So I can't be more excited and scared to a doc about the culture. Just remember, I'm doing this in love." That's when he tweeted out. Now, here's the second part of that. In Parham's piece, he details how Black Twitter began in September 2009 with a fun hashtag. In no time, it became abundantly clear that we were all out there just waiting for the right moment to bring us together on the platform. According to Mr. Parham, he said it was September 6, 2009, and exactly 4:25 p.m. when Ashley Weatherspoon logged onto Twitter and wrote, "You know you're Black when you win, hashtag, you cancel plans when it's raining." Parham wrote, "The hashtag spread like wildfire. Within 2 hours, 1.2% of all Twitter correspondence revolved around Weatherspoon's hashtag, as Black Twitter users riffed on everything from car rims to tall tees. It was the viral hit she was after and confirmation of a rich fabric being threaded together across the platform. Here, in all of its melanated glory, was Black Twitter." Wow. Wow. Do you think that, Suzette, do you think that this story is important to tell?
Heck yeah. We got to tell our own story because people will write us right out of history. Hello, somebody.
Come on.
I'm grateful for this. I think, again, even as a person that doesn't consume it in the quantities that others do consume Twitter, I just know that over the last 10 years, we have revolutionized news in terms of Black Twitter, in terms of breaking stories. Oftentimes, it'll be on Black Twitter first, and then you'll see it on your local news and even on national news platforms. What I really want to compare this to, and I watched Faraji, a documentary last night. You know, I'm in Miami, and I'm really watching PBS late at night here. And I watched a PBS special. I watched a PBS special on the Zora Neale Hurston, the one and only. And her story really reminded me, as I was reading this story and preparing for today, about how much she took pride in writing her own story, even when people in the academy wanted to kind of make her seem like she wasn't worthy of the way she wrote and the dialect she used and the voices that she gave life to. And wanted to expose our country to, she still kept her own voice. And I think that is true about Black Twitter. I think, for whatever, other people do on this platform, we have maintained our own voice. We have like almost this inside baseball, inside conversations that people are getting access to that is rather, fluid, organic, enjoyable, hilarious at times. And it's just really a reflection of us. So I'm so glad these gentlemen are bringing this story from their eyes, from their lens, a Black gaze into what Black Twitter really means so that we can write our own narrative and be proud of it and share it with the world.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm in total agreement with that. And I think that it is interesting because I go on Twitter a lot to look at, like you said, for news. But then when those hashtags start popping up about life as a Black person in this country, you cannot get better information. I'm telling you, Twitter is the space to go to. But here's the thing. It's like, how do we make sure that space is protected? And more importantly, here's my thing. It's like, okay, there's a thin line between, satirical comedy and then just being outright disrespectful, right? Mm-hmm. And so, with Black Twitter, sometimes it's like certain things of our culture that we know that everybody know, like certain things of our culture should not be made fun of. You know what I mean? If we, it'd be like, when you're Black
Twitter is the karate chop in your nose, though. That's what they do.
And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes I just be like, we laughing at the wrong things sometimes. And that's not, and I'm not trying to be like,
No, I think that's the thing with Twitter. There is no gatekeeping. Everything that we normally would say behind closed doors, there's certain things I won't even say here. But behind closed doors, I might have that conversation with my homegirl off camera. But Black Twitter is that, again, a little bit of anonymity, a little bit of freedom, again, to speak your mind unfiltered. Right. And I think people really were drawn to that I can create an account and I can say whatever the heck I want to say.
But you can't, though.
Well,
I mean, I'm saying in terms of it'd be one thing. It'd be one thing if we own Twitter, if Black folks collectively own Twitter, right? But it's another thing that people say, well, I can say what I want to say. Yeah, but trust and believe, you're not the only one looking at your tweet. or black
no,
folks.
they going back in time now. They going back in time. So even evolved. Yeah,
there still has to be some level of awareness that you have to take before you can just post anything about white people or offensive stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and even I'm not just talking about offensive to other people, offensive to black folks in the community. You still can't just post whatever you want to say. You know, whether it's language, whether it's about our traditions, whether it's about our struggle. Like, I get that you want to say whatever you want to say, but I'm sorry, there still should be some filtering. Like, you just can't say whatever. Don't feel so empowered to be like, I'm online so I can say whatever, because you know you damn well you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't say that to somebody's face.
Well, Mr. Elon Musk said he want to be the promoter of free speech, so other people taking it the wrong way. I'm not saying I agree with the culture that's existing right now, as of today on Twitter. I hear what you're saying loud and clear, but I do think free speech again is a double-edged sword, and so there are people who want to say things just to, you know, provoke, and then there's a beautiful side of Black Twitter that has allowed us to find community and to be real with one another, know that we're not alone, and kind of walk in solidarity with one another on key issues. So there is always good mixed with a little bad as well. But I'm glad they're doing the documentary.
Me too. Should be very interesting. And big shout out to Princess Penny and Jason Parham for highlighting that part of the community. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Suzette, my sister, it's always a pleasure to check in with you. Yes. Make sure y'all check out her YouTube space, Suzette Speaks, and her show. Make sure you subscribe to Suzette Speaks. There you go, right there, folks.
Hey, winning.
She's doing great work of continuing the conversations. And, you know, all that she's doing here, she continues to do it on her space. So make sure y'all subscribe to Suzette Speaks. Suzette, thank you so much. God willing, we'll reconnect next week.
Thank you, Culture Crew. And thank you to everyone watching. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us today. I thank each and every one of you. Make sure y'all do your due diligence. Go check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. And make sure that you support Black media like never before. We need your support, financial support. We need your support in sharing the content. We need your support to let people know that Black media is here to stay. So make sure you go to blackstarnetwork.com. Follow us on all social media at Black Star Network. And while you're also on social media, make sure you follow me, Faraji Muhammad, at The Real Faraji on IG and Faraji on Twitter. All right, folks, stay tuned. Up next is RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Checking out my big brother Roland and his fantastic panel as they continue to cover the conversation and the coverage of the History Making Day in Maryland and so much more. So stay tuned for that. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.